Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you for joining us for this Steinway & Sons online webinar masterclass with Steinway Artist Fred Hersch. At Steinway & Sons, we believe in the power of music to teach, grow, relieve stress, express, and heal. Beginning March 1st, celebrate the 168th anniversary of Steinway & Sons, an iconic American instrument and an indelible piece of American musical history, with low interest for 3 full years on all new Steinway, Boston, and Essex pianos. Enjoy a 1.68 interest rate financing for 36 months on the piano you've always dreamed of owning. This deal ends March 31st. You can also join Steinway & Sons on a virtual Steinway Factory tour in celebration of our 168th anniversary on March 7th at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Experience the making of a Steinway from wood selection and rim bending to the action and soundboard. Journey through the Astoria factory on an epic tour to see the handmade masterpiece that is a Steinway Grand. See the virtual factory tour link in the Zoom Q&A for more information. On behalf of Steinway & Sons, allow me to introduce myself, our teacher, and our student. I'm your host, Ben Finan, Editor-in-Chief at Steinway & Sons. My purview includes the Steinway Owners Magazine, Steinway.com, and the award-winning online music magazine, ListenMusicCulture.com. I'm also the producer and host of Soundboard, the official Steinway & Sons podcast on artistry and craftsmanship. Find it on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you pod your casts, or at Steinway.com/soundboard. A living member of jazz's piano pantheon, Fred Hersch is a pervasively influential creative force who has shaped the course of jazz over more than 3 decades as an improviser, composer, educator, band leader, collaborator, and recording artist. With some 50 albums to his credit as a leader or co-leader, he's a 15-time Grammy Award nominee who continues to earn jazz's most prestigious awards, including recent distinctions as a 2016 Doris Duke Artist and 2018 Jazz Pianist of the Year from the Jazz Journalists Association. Proclaimed a living legend by The New Yorker, Hersch has long defined jazz's creative edge in a wide variety of settings, from his solo recitals and exploratory duos to his trios and innovative chamber settings. As a composer, he is a recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship. His recent releases are live in Europe with his celebrated trio and the 2020 solo disc, Songs from Home. His acclaimed memoir, Good Things Happen Slowly, is now available from Crown Archetype Books. Our student today is Ben Collins Siegel. If you'd like to submit a question during the masterclass, you may do so through Zoom. We of course won't get to all of your questions, but we'll answer what we can. Fred and Ben, welcome. I'm going to leave it to you guys and duck out for a bit.
Okay, hey Ben, let me
Hey, Fred.
let me just change this so I can see you better. Hold on a second. Zoom, where are you? Okay, 1 second. There you are. So where are you coming to us from, Ben?
From Maplewood, New Jersey.
Right, and just for everybody out there, how long have you been interested in jazz, playing jazz? Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, so I've been playing jazz for about 4 years now. A friend introduced me to a program called Jazz House Kids, and I've been playing there for about 3 years now, and that Jazz House got me into it, and I'm still there, so.
That's excellent, excellent, excellent. So everybody, Ben has generously decided to play something for us. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to be listening and observing, and then I'm going to sort of give Ben a lesson with all of you in on the procedure. And then there'll be some question and answers at the end. And you can put those, I believe, in the chat. or raise your hand. So what are you going to play, Ben? Have you figured that out?
Yeah, Dolphin Dance by Herbie Hancock.
Excellent, excellent tune. Okay,
Yeah.
great, beautiful.
Okay.
All right, let's have a virtual clap out there for Ben. Okay, so let me just ask you a couple questions.
Mm.
On the nervousness scale, 10 being the most nervous and 1 being the least nervous, uh, how was that for you?
Probably a 7.
A
Six or
7.
seven. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So everybody gets nervous. You know, I get nervous sometimes. It's kind of normal. You have a lot of adrenaline, right?
Mm.
Mm. And so everybody has different manifestations of nervousness. Some people, their hands get cold, or they shake, or you sweat, or they get clammy. Uh, what happens to you when you get nervous? Any physical things? What goes on?
Sometimes my fingers get a little sweaty and my foot will start um, shaking up and down a tiny bit
Your
on the
foot?
floor. Yeah,
Okay. Left foot, right foot?
left foot.
Okay. All right. So a little twitch going on down there.
Yeah,
Okay. So, um, like I said, we all have nerves. The question is, how do you deal with it? And unfortunately, the worst thing that happens when we get nervous is we get into our brains a little too much. So we
mm,
kind of stop hearing, which is actually the thing that we really need to do most is use our ears.
mm,
So it's very easy to get into, gee, I played this better yesterday, or I should have played that, or I didn't like what I just played, or I want to play this in the next chorus. You get ahead of yourself. It's very hard to just kind of stay present, right?
mm.
Did you find that was happening a little bit?
Yeah, maybe a little bit,
Okay,
but
good. I mean, you play so well for somebody so young. Ben is 13 out there, by the way. I didn't even listen to jazz till I was 17, 18, and there were no schools and no after school programs and hardly any music schools, college music schools back then. So it was more like learning jazz by hanging out in bars and playing without sheet music. So no
mm,
real books. Uh, so what attracted you to this tune? I'm just sort of curious. I mean, it's a great tune, but I'm just curious
yeah.
what in particular.
Well, a few reasons. Herbie Hancock's one of my favorite pianists, and the way he plays this tune is incredible. And also, there's so it's not this tune isn't just it's not just 2 5 1s. There's so many possibilities, and chord substitutions, and so many ways of approaching it or playing it.
Right. Different ways of kind of threading the needle through
Yeah.
you know. Um, I think for me, it's useful to think of in this kind of a context, like a swinging kind of a tune, uh, to think a little bit more like the piano is a drum set, by which I don't mean that we bang, right? But the piano is, of course, a part of the percussion family.
Mm,
So when you uh, strike the key, it goes down, and then of course it comes back up to its place of rest, right?
mm,
Uh, Now, if you were a drummer, you wouldn't take a stick and just leave it there on the drum because it wouldn't make any sound. It would just go thud.
yeah.
So what happens is booms like that, right?
Mm,
And touch on the piano uh, is a little bit like that. You do not play aggressively, which is good. You're not what I call bottoming out on the key. You're not wasting a lot of energy down there. You have got a lot of facility. Uh, but 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 now what you're doing in terms of playing like a drum set, um, this is just for everybody out there. If you're playing jazz, your right hand improvised line is kind of like a ride cymbal.
mm,
That's your ride cymbal if it was a drum set analogy. So you love Herbie Hancock, of course I do too. And Herbie Hancock is known for having one of the kind of fattest eighth note kind of sounds. It's
yeah.
not just the way he was recorded, it's the miracle of a pianist's touch. I mean, you and I could play the same piano and make it sound totally different, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at Herbie Hancock, uh, kind of a fatter eighth note, somebody like Chick Corea or McCoy Tyner, kind of a thinner eighth note.
Mm,
Keith Jarrett to me has a little gooier eighth note. Uh, so uh, your right hand line, your improvised line, is kind of your signature, just like a drummer's cymbal beat is his signature or her signature. So, and just like, Art Blakey plays the cymbal one way and Tony Williams plays it another way and Philly
Mm.
Joe Jones plays it another way, you can tell, a drummer can tell immediately who those people are. And usually with pianists, if you're an astute student of all the great jazz pianists, you can kind of tell who's who, partially by how they play that eighth note.
Mm.
Okay, but especially now during the pandemic, all of us pianists are playing solo piano. That's kind of what we got, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so many students come and play for me. They say, "Oh, I sound so much better with a trio," and but hey, you're playing solo piano every time you practice, so it's good to kind of make friends with it.
Mm.
Uh, but I think this one of the secrets in solo piano is how the hands work together. So if I were to have a big comment on your playing, excellent as it is, especially for one so young, uh, pretty much your left hand was doing one thing
Mm.
and your right hand was doing something else.
Yeah.
So it was almost like you have a ride cymbal and maybe one or maybe a bass drum and something else, a snare. You've got a very small drum set, right?
Mm.
Uh, and this is interesting. The piano does many things. It can be a big band. It can be an orchestra. It can be a horn player. I mean, it's such a versatile instrument. But it does several things that no other instruments can do. One is to go in opposite directions, and the other is to have multiple voices
Mm.
going on at the same time.
Mm.
So that would be something that we could talk about. These multiple voices, uh, and maybe uh, increasing your kind of drum settiness, um, uh, partially by using triplets. Uh, I didn't find a lot of kind of large triplets in your playing. I found eighths and sixteenths, maybe a few eighth note triplets, but uh, large triplets allow us to perhaps get over the bar line a little bit more.
Yeah.
And um, if you're playing, let's say, a 32 bar tune, like a standard of some sort or a bebop tune, and you're playing 5 choruses, well, if you're playing solo piano, you have the ability to make that 150 bars of continuous music, 160 bars, continuous music,
Mm.
not 5 times 32 or what would be 25 times 8.
Oh.
So, in order to do that, it's necessary to leave a little bit of space. So,
Yeah.
what's happening with your left hand? Your left hand is pretty much marking the chord changes. And then your right hand is playing things that agree with your left hand, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, I mean, to be fair, it it sounds a little bit like scales or maybe a pattern or something. That's okay. I mean, this is where you're developing, you know.
Mm.
Uh, but the goal is to really just take this theme and use it to tell a story, which is
Oh.
different every time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So for those of you out there who are not, hardcore jazz people, what we're essentially doing is theme and variations. And if you think about the form of a tune and the harmonic progression of a tune, it's like a glass mixing bowl, right? You can see through it, but it's solid. So if you put water and a goldfish in there, it looks one way. If you put M&Ms in it, it looks another way. If you put rocks in there, it looks another way. But the shape doesn't change. It just looks different depending what you put in it. So to be a more resourceful player and to be able to play for longer periods of time over a tune, the more resources you have, the better,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So I'm going to ask you to do just a few little experiments, and
Okay.
you know, I'm over the years I've come to use the word experiment more than practice,
Mm.
because I think the ideal attitude for playing improvised music is let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see what happens, right?
Uh,
They say, you know, great quote, jazz is the sound of surprise.
uh,
So, yeah, you know, we don't want to know, we don't want you to play what you know. We want you to play what you don't know.
okay.
Okay. So, in order to do that, I find it more useful to set up things that are like experiments. Like, okay, you can control, you need a control. So, that could be usually time, you know, a block of time. I have my trusty Frosty the Snowman kitchen timer, uh, or you can use a number of choruses.
Uh,
Uh, but the idea is like, I'm going to do this one thing for a while and see what happens, right?
yeah.
I'm not just going to try to fill up the space.
Yeah.
I'm going to work with one idea, and it could be a like a musical, rhythmic, harmonic idea. It could be something that's pianistic, whether it's trills or double thirds. Could be a stylistic thing, could be a formal thing. But what you want to do is uh, work with something for a while and just see what you can get out of it.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you to do a couple of things for me. The first one is going to sound uh, maybe a little easy. We'll see how you do with it.
Mm.
Uh, so in your left hand, uh, you can just play uh, the downbeats of the harmony. You know, right, like that. Okay, but I want you to do it with a very light sound, almost like a pizzicato sound, not sustained. So just very light, just
Okay.
like you're, you know, patting a dog or something. Very, very light. And then in the right hand, I want you to play continuous, let's start with continuous quarter notes, okay, with a rule. So this is the experiment. So if you start on G, then you have to, the next note has to be up a half step A flat, up a whole step A, down a half step G flat, or down a whole step F. So you can't play any thirds. You can't repeat any notes. So you're just going to snake through this harmony with half and whole steps.
Okay.
Okay, with just straight quarter notes. We're not talking about swing or style. This is just gut improvising without any, you know, jazziness. Okay, see if
Okay.
you can do that, like about 1, 2, 3, 4, like that.
Okay.
No, 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 no. Sorry. So you're going.
Oh, 8 minutes. Okay.
That's what you're doing.
Okay.
Whoop. So I heard.
Yeah.
Okay. You can slow it down if you want. This is not easy. It sounds
Okay.
easy, but it's not. Okay, stop you. So the left hand is getting long, and I heard like a bunches of thirds and things like this, things like that. Okay.
Mhm.
So this only works if you are like super strict with it.
Mhm.
Okay. So try one more time, and then I'll tell you why I'm asking you to do this.
Okay.
Whoops. So you already get,
Okay.
you can slow it down.
Mm.
Okay. So this is something you're going to have to work on because
Okay.
I'm already you've done 4/3 in about 10 bars. And
Okay.
do you have any idea why I'm asking you to do this? Do you have an
Um,
idea?
I mean, I think yeah, to like expand, possibilities, and because I'm used to just playing very written out or lines, just to really expand and make it not so written out, more
Okay,
possibilities, I guess.
so when you played Dolphin Dance before, how much of that was written out?
Not much actually. The only stuff that was written out was nothing was written out. I just used my ears to catch a little Bill Evans um,
Okay, well
intro, but most of it was just me doing improv.
okay. That's what you want to be doing. The reason I'm asking you to do this is um, generally, like you were, we want to play a third and jump to a safe note.
Mhm.
And if you did this for 15 minutes and really did not play any thirds, you would start to play different notes than what you might play if you were playing just whatever you want,
Okay.
right? Because whenever you're playing two intervals, there are no wrong notes.
Mhm.
No, that's perfectly fine.
Mhm.
You know, so I'm asking you to weave your way through the tune without necessarily giving us always chord tones.
Okay.
Okay, so an example might be, okay,
Mhm.
so
Okay.
some of it was chords and scales, but also sometimes, I was not on a safe note on a downbeat.
Yeah, because I guess I was thinking every note has to work.
No,
Like,
that's the
okay.
idea is it does not have to work.
Okay.
And if you do this for like 15 minutes, you kind of get into the zone, right? Of just improvising with the tiniest little block. Okay. Like okay. So let's try another thing.
Okay.
Okay. So we have this motive. That's pretty much, that's, that's a lot of the tune, right?
Yeah.
Uh, right.
Mhm.
So I'm going to ask you to just, play with left hand, whatever you want, have a ball. And then I'd like you as much as possible to play a chorus and use this pretty much exclusively. You can make it longer, shorter, upside down. You can do whatever you want with it, but I want you to take that one idea, that germ that makes this tune work, and for a whole chorus, not it doesn't have to be mathematical. I'm not saying everything has to be that way, but with the idea that I'm going to take this and I'm going to use it as the basis to improvise an entire chorus.
Okay.
Just see what happens.
Okay.
Okay. So was that fun or not?
Um, I guess it was pretty fun,
Okay.
experimenting.
All right. Just to let you know, and you're a very, very young player. Um, but challenges ahead for you are, first of all, using two hands in a better, more integrated way, but also just uh, swinging a little bit more. So if you're playing, that's not really swinging. If
Mm,
a bass player played that for me, I'd fire them, right?
yeah.
So anytime you're playing bass notes for yourself, try to think of the sound of a bass. A
Mm,
bass doesn't go it goes like a ping, 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 ping. So sustaining those bass notes is not really going to help you.
okay.
Just the idea of just keeping them lighter.
Mm,
Uh, so I'm going to ask you to do one more thing, and then I might give this a whirl myself, see how I do, before we get some questions and stuff. Um, uh, I'd like you to slow this down to about there,
okay.
and uh, um, just really think more on 2 and 4, because right now your time is a little kind of 1 and 3 ish. If
Mm,
you know kind of what I mean, not
yeah.
completely, but a little bit. So let's see if we can just put it there, and just play the melody and keep going till I tell you to stop.
Okay.
And you know what would help is to play an introduction. So the easiest possible introduction for this tune is that E minor section. You
Well,
start
what's that
with E
part?
minor.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So that would be the easiest, that's an easy introduction, right?
Yeah.
But you can use that 8 bars to establish the groove so that when your melody comes in, it feels like,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
And I want you to count it out loud for yourself before you play it.
Okay. So, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, sorry, that was twice as fast.
Yeah. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right. So we're rushing a bit, right? It got faster, and I had a feeling it was going to get faster. This is not an easy tempo to play. Okay. So that's something that maybe you can work on. Most people try that with a metronome on 2 and 4 like that. You can try the metronome just on 4. You can even try the metronome on 2 and 4 and. Okay. Um, whoops. Generally speaking, you should also listen to your phrasing because you tend to start a lot of your phrases on the first beat of the bar. So it gets a little boxy. If you can think about, okay, here's an experiment. I'm going to play 10 choruses of this, and I'm going to start every phrase on a pickup. And of one, and of two, and of three, and of four. Just see if you can do that. It might make the phrases a bit more swinging. But especially that time, your hands were so divided. You know, this was just doing this, that was doing bass notes. So there wasn't anything that brings them together.
Okay.
Like, just like a simple thing to say, start to learn how to bring your hands together would be what I call outside in, where you play two notes on the outside and then grab a chord made up of two hands on the inside. The easiest one that I know is Someday My Prince Will Come. So you go, sorry, this microphone keeps falling off. Now it's a tangled spaghetti. Sorry, folks. Okay, so I have basically an outside note, and then I'm using an inside chord that's made up of both hands. So, um, I mean, there are many variations, of course, but that's just a very simple way to start to say, how can I do that? Another trick is, as much as possible, and you can do this with almost any standard and certainly with almost any ballad, is to play your melody as much as possible on the fourth and fifth fingers. Because if you go, that I'm using up all of my right hand with those four fingers.
Yeah.
Right? So you want to leave the lower part of your right hand available to make a nicer chord with the top part of the left hand. So, I mean, certain ballads are tricky and certain standards. I mean, you can't play confirmation like that, right? But you can certainly do more with a tune like this. Let me turn this a little bit. I haven't played this in years, so apologize in advance. So I've got a voicing there. Not the best
Amazing.
playing in the world, but it's been many years since I played that tune. So, but I'm trying to play the whole range of the piano, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, getting down there like your bass drum and a lot of moving chords, maybe some like da 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 triplet kind of things, so that like when you get to these open sections in the tune, the G major section, the E minor section, those can be kind of windows to really be looser.
Mm,
You know? And if you want to play a longer solo, you also have to build up some rhythmic tension,
yeah.
right? Okay. There's so much we could talk about, Ben.
Mm.
And maybe we will do that some other time. For now, just hang on. I want to see if the other Ben has any questions that are coming in for me. I can't hear you.
So I do indeed. First of all, thank you so much, Fred. Thank you so much, Ben. That was wonderfully illuminating, and we all appreciate it. Fred, I'd like to ask you first, you talked about fat versus thin eighth notes in pianist style. Could you unpack that concept for us a little bit?
Yeah. Um, I can't, I mean, look, um, um, this is not universally true, but I've studied um, the great classical pianists my entire life. And if you say are comparing Vladimir Horowitz with Arthur Rubinstein, uh, I would say probably that Horowitz's general eighth note and kind of uh, um, general approach to sound is probably more attack, a little sharper, um, certainly certainly a great sense of rhythm and propulsion in his playing. But Rubinstein has a sound that just kind of envelops you and draws you in. I mean, I heard both of them live, uh, unforgettable experiences. Just the sound that they got. And they have a very sonic signature. They have a specific signature. And it might wiggle whether they're playing Bach or Ravel, of course, or Prokofiev or Rachmaninoff. Jazz pianists, you know, we are composing in real time. So the way that we play eighth notes is not just the loudness or softness. It's like if you really listen deeply, you'll see that different pianists have a different length on their eighth note, a space between the eighth note, a question of whether they're kind of going down more with arm weight or floating on the key a little bit more. But I brought up those, the four great piano heroes of the 60s, McCoy Tyner, Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, and Keith Jarrett. Um, uh, Herbie had a classical training in a certain way that, for instance, Chick Corea did not have. And so consequently, if they're trying to play something swinging, I feel that Herbie Hancock's sound is like deeper and warmer, and consequently, Chick, when he is playing something trying to swing, it's not it's not completely swing. There's this influence of Latin music in his playing, and McCoy Tyner was a big model. If you look at trumpet players, for instance, Miles Davis or Chet Baker, they had this big fat sound, and so they didn't have to play a lot for it to have impact. Trumpet players with a thinner sound might have had to play more notes, a Woody Shaw or Booker Little, for those of you jazz nerds out there. So, I think this, it's chicken and egg. Does the sound determine the content? Does the content determine the sound? Is it just happenstance or how one hears? Uh, I don't know. Sound has been perhaps a little more of a priority in my playing than facility. Um, yeah, I guess I can move around okay, but I'm more concerned with like a tone that speaks, and it doesn't have to be loud to speak. So I don't know if that helped, but
Very much. I mean, we're used to thinking about tone with brass and woodwind instruments, but of course, it's there for the piano as well. Um, Fred, in the beginning, you were talking with Ben about doing 5 sets of 32 versus 160 measures of making that a bigger arc. What can pianists work on to extend their phrases? And I'm thinking specifically maybe extend over each of those 32s, that kind of imaginary double bar that's there. How do we carry our interpretations through to the next 32?
yeah, I that's a very good question, and I think this is for everybody out there who plays jazz piano, and Ben too. Um, the hardest thing to do when you're playing solo jazz piano is leave a space, whether you're nervous or not. It's just it takes confidence not to play something. So at the beginning of every chorus of Dolphin Dance, if you play, okay, or, okay, right there, you've put that bar line in there, right? So, uh, so first of all, and this is just for me, one man's opinion, my the most important part of a performance for me of a standard tune is when I finish the melody and I just start into the improvisation, kind of how I kind of get from the theme into the solo, kind of the jumping off point. That sets the tone for the whole ball of wax. So what I want to do is at that moment, those last couple of bars of the tune into the solo, I want to engage myself. I want to play something that's going to make me like, oh, pay attention. I want something that'll make the listener pay attention. And if I'm playing with a trio, I want them to pay attention. Because if I go back to the, tonic, bar 33, business as usual, then already I'm basically doing 1 to 32, 1 to 32, 1 to 32, so forth. So one of the things that we can do is steal liberally from not only jazz pianists but classical pianists. This is capable of so many textures, and you have this entire range here that you can play with. So if I was say going to play we got a minute, right? I can play something, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'll take Embraceable You, and I will play the head and maybe four choruses and try to show you how I might try to keep that interesting in a longer form uh, for that period of time. If I don't get tangled up here. Let me take these off for the moment. So I was leaving holes, right? And I just felt like, okay, let's go to another key. Like, why not? So to just embrace, contrary motion and all the different textures, you know, and I mean, I could have kept going, but the idea is, to do some things that are more like a drum set, things that are more like an orchestra, things that are more like two horns playing together, um, and 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 but also, use the fact that the tune has kind of a long line that determined a lot of my improvisation.
Thank you, Fred. Um, we have a couple questions about musical literature. For someone who's classically trained, one attendee writes, what would be some resources for books to get jump started on jazz? Or is getting books the wrong approach? And another attendee asks, what books does Fred think are worth reading for jazz improvisation?
Well, okay. I mean, I'll just go out front and say that I've really never read any books on like jazz piano improvisation. That doesn't mean that I could have or should have, but uh, I've kind of tried to do things my own way. There are a number of books out there. The standard go-to is Mark Levine's book. David Berkman has a nice one, but I don't really recommend any books. The only books that I ask any student to get are the harmonized Bach chorales and the Charlie Parker Omnibook, because the Bach chorales are the Bible of voice leading, basically. And the Charlie Parker heads and solos, if you care to get into them, are basically the Bible of bebop. But if you want to get into jazz and you're coming from classical music, or there are two suggestions I would have. The first one is you have to listen to jazz. You can't just. It's not a tech a technique per se. You have to have it in your ears, um, and part of that is doing what I call deep listening, which might be taking one tune and listening to it 5, 6, 7 times in a row, and just each time focusing on a different element, whether it's harmony or the phrasing or the accompaniment or the bass player and drummer, what are they doing? And just really listen deeply. And that also helps you listen better to yourself. But the other the other thing I suggest doing is try to improvise on something whether it's a classical piece or Mary Had a Little Lamb or a Christmas song, just something that's not too challenging, and just see what happens if you just try to kind of make it up. And the big key to learning anything, but particularly this kind of music, is you learn from your mistakes. You have to be willing to make mistakes. This is not paint by numbers. You can't learn this, and plug it in, and voila, you're a jazz musician or an artist. You'll be competent, but it won't sound like you. So just take, any song, pop song, doesn't matter, and just see, first of all, if you can play the melody without sheet music, or play the melody your own way, and then just try to noodle around. I mean, look, if you're playing Beethoven sonatas, you know how to do arpeggios and scale patterns and filigree, and it's not much different. Yeah, there was another question I think you had.
No. I think that's as good a place as any to end. Fred Hersch, thank you so much. Ben Collins Siegel, thank you so much. Really a wonderful masterclass today. I appreciate both of you. Thank you so much to our audience, to all our Zoom participants. And until we meet again, online or in real life, on behalf of Steinway artist Fred Hersch, our student Ben Collins Siegel, our producer Alexis Leon, and all of us at Steinway and Sons. I am Ben Finan, and I remain musically yours. Thank you so much.